The exile. The arena was silent except for the sound of Kaelira's breathing. Dust swirled in the evening light, catching on the edges of her armor. Around her, the circle of warriors who had once been her rivals lay beaten, their weapons scattered, their pride broken. The crowd of her people, thousands gathered in the stone terraces, watched her with a mixture of awe and unease. She had defeated every challenger. Again. Kaelira lowered her blade, its edge still humming with the energy of the duel. She was tall even for her kind, her frame hardened by years of combat and ritual training. Scars lined her arms and neck like badges of honor. Her people believed strength was the highest virtue, the proof of divine favor. By that measure, she was blessed above all. And yet, she saw no triumph in their eyes. Only fear. The elder priest stepped forward, his robes dragging across the sand. His voice, thin but steady, carried across the arena. Kaelira, daughter of the Bloodforge, you have proven what none can deny. No warrior stands against you. No blade humbles you. And for that, you are cursed. A murmur swept through the crowd. Kaelira stiffened, disbelief hardening into anger. Cursed. Her voice rang like a clash of steel. I have honored every right. I have fought as the ancestors commanded. Who among you dares say my victories shame us? The priest did not flinch. Your victories make all others weak. You have unbalanced the circle. Where once strength was shared, now it belongs to you alone. Such power cannot remain among us. You are exiled. Exiled. The word struck harder than any blade. Kaelira wanted to laugh, to roar her defiance, but the silence in the arena killed the sound in her throat. The faces around her told her everything. Warriors who had once dreamed of testing themselves against her now looked away. Elders who had praised her now whispered with tight lips. Even the young, who had cheered her name, sat wide-eyed and afraid. Her strength had become a threat to her own people. The priest raised his staff. Leave this world. Seek battle among the stars if you must. But your place is not here. Kaelira's grip tightened on her sword. Part of her wanted to cut him down, to prove once more that none could command her. But what would it matter? Victory had already cost her everything. With a slow breath, she sheathed her blade. Very well. If no challenge remains here, I will find one beyond. The decision was made ritual. That night, beneath the red moons, Kaelira walked alone to the starport. Her people did not stop her. No farewells, no honor guard. Only silence. She was not defeated, worse, she was unwanted. The galaxy opened before her. Kaelira traveled from world to world, seeking warriors who might test her. Gladiatorial arenas welcomed her, mercenary bands sought her, pirate lords boasted they could break her. One by one, they fell. None lasted more than a handful of strikes. And with every easy victory, her rage deepened. What was the purpose of strength if no one could meet it? What use was a blade if every battle ended before it began? She fought until the thrill died, leaving only bitterness. Whispers followed her now. The exiled war queen. The blade seeker. Some spoke her name with reverence, others with dread. And always, there was the same question. When would she finally meet her match? Kaelira began to doubt there was such a being. Her people had been right. She had outgrown them, and perhaps all others. Still, she pressed onward. She would rather die to a worthy foe than live in eternal emptiness. On the rim of a distant sector, she heard the strangest rumor yet. Among the traders and mercenaries, tales spread of a human colony. A species small, soft, and fragile. A people considered weak by every galactic measure, slow, brittle, and short-lived. And yet, there were stories. One name repeated itself. A man who had fought off raiders with nothing but his hands. A man who stood unyielding where armored beasts had fallen. A man who survived what should have killed him. A human. Kaelira laughed when she first heard it. The idea was absurd. Humans were vermin, not warriors. Their bodies broke easily, their skin tore like cloth. And yet, she remembered the silence of her people as they exiled her. She remembered the endless string of hollow victories. If even the faintest chance existed that this fragile being could test her, she would see for herself. Kaelira set her course for the human world. And for the first time in years, her pulse quickened with anticipation. The encounter. The shuttle descended through gray skies, its engines echoing over fields of gold and green. From the viewport, Kaelira saw not a fortress, not a city of warriors, but a scattering of farmlands. Low houses of stone and timber dotted the valley, smoke curling gently from chimneys. Children ran alongside irrigation canals. Farmers guided machines across the soil. This was the human world. Kaelira felt a bitter laugh rise in her throat. She had expected at least a garrison, some sign of warriors. Instead, the colony looked fragile, almost laughably so. The very air seemed to breathe peace, not battle. Her ship touched down near the edge of the settlement. The colonists gathered at a distance, whispering nervously. She saw their faces, plain, unarmored, skin soft and unmarked by ritual scars. Their eyes darted from her towering figure to the long blade strapped across her back. A man stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered but unarmored, his clothes worn from labor. His hair was touched with gray, his hands calloused. He carried no weapon. Yet when his gaze met hers, it did not waver. "You're the one they've been talking about," he said, voice steady. Kaelira studied him. There was no fear in his posture, no trembling. His presence was calm, like the stillness of a mountain. She found it irritating. "You are Daniel Reeve," she said, voice sharp. "The human who broke raiders with his bare hands. The one who would not yield." He gave the faintest shrug. "I defended my home. Nothing more." Kaelira narrowed her eyes. "Do not diminish it. Warriors across the sector speak of your defiance. I came to see if the stories were lies." The colonists shifted uneasily behind him. Daniel glanced at them, then back at her. "We're not looking for a fight here. We are farmers, builders, families." Her hand went to her blade, and the colonists gasped. "I did not travel across the stars to watch farmers dig in dirt," she said. "I came for a warrior. And if you are not one, then this colony has none worth my time." Daniel's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. "We fight when we must. That's enough." The dismissiveness stoked her fury. Kaelira stepped forward, towering over him. "You will face me. Here, before your people. If you win, your colony will be spared my challenge. If you refuse—" Her eyes swept across the crowd, letting the threat hang unspoken. Children clung to their mothers. Men shifted uneasily. The weight of her presence pressed on them like a storm. Daniel exhaled slowly. "You're forcing me into this." "I am offering you honor," Kaelira snapped. "Few are worthy of standing against me. Count it as blessing." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then Daniel nodded once. "Fine. If that's what it takes to keep these people safe, I'll stand against you." A ripple of fear and relief passed through the colonists. They began whispering prayers, gathering at the edges of the field. Kaelira smiled, a cold, eager smile. At last, the duel was arranged for the following dusk, in the wide clearing beyond the settlement. Colonists carried benches and torches, forming a rough ring. Children whispered excitedly until hushed by their parents. The air was thick with tension, expectation, and fear. Kaelira spent the hours before sharpening her blade. The weapon was older than many of the stars in the night sky, forged from a core of living metal her people prized above all else. She whispered the rites of battle as she polished its edge, feeling its weight, its hunger. This blade had cut down champions and beasts beyond number. Soon, it would prove itself again. She thought of Daniel Reeve, calm, unimpressed, speaking as though she were a nuisance instead of a storm. That calmness infuriated her more than fear would have. She longed to see it break. As the sun dipped low, Daniel appeared at the edge of the clearing. He wore the same plain clothes as before, though now a simple training blade hung at his side. He moved without flourish, as though this were no more than another day's labor. Kaelira rose, towering above the gathered humans. She unsheathed her blade, the steel catching the dying light like fire. Gasps filled the air. Daniel met her gaze evenly. No fear. No pride. Only resolve. "You'll have your fight," he said quietly. And for the first time in years, Kaelira felt her heart quicken. Not with rage. Not with bitterness. But with anticipation. Tomorrow, the duel would begin. The duel. The clearing was hushed as the last light of the sun bled into dusk. Torches flickered at the edges of the circle, their flames bending in the cool wind. Farmers, children, and elders huddled close, their eyes fixed on the two figures who stepped into the center. Kaelira's armor gleamed darkly, etched with runes of her people. Her blade sang as it left its scabbard, a low metallic hum that made even seasoned colonists flinch. She stood tall, every movement sharp with practiced lethality. Across from her, Daniel Reeve looked almost plain. No armor. No divine runes. Just the farmer's frame and the wooden training blade at his side. Yet he carried himself as though none of it mattered. He nodded once, as though this was just another day's work. The contrast burned Kaelira's pride. "Show me the truth of your people," she said, voice carrying like a challenge hurled across mountains. Daniel's expression did not change. "This doesn't have to be anything more than it is. But I'll protect them." He glanced toward the crowd, then back at her. "Always." The signal was given. The duel began. Kaelira moved first. Her strike was a blur of steel and muscle, her blade cutting through the air with the force of a falling star. Sand exploded as her foot drove into the ground, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Daniel didn't parry. He stepped aside. Calm, efficient, as if her killing blow was no more than a gust of wind. The colonists gasped. Kaelira snarled. She swung again, faster, angling to cleave through him. Again he wasn't there. He pivoted with unhurried precision, letting her blade pass within a hair's breadth, as though he had seen the strike long before it came. "You mock me," she spat, driving forward with a flurry of attacks. Her blade slashed high, low, spinning arcs designed to overwhelm. Dust clouded the air. Sparks leapt where steel kissed stone. Daniel moved like water. Each attack found only empty air or met the light tap of his wooden blade redirecting her momentum. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't faster. He was untouchable. Kaelira roared, her voice echoing across the field. She brought her sword down in a two-handed strike that had shattered armored foes. Daniel caught the wooden blade beneath it and angled his stance. Instead of crushing him, her strike glanced away, sinking harmlessly into the soil. The crowd murmured. Kaelira's chest heaved with fury. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Her arms burned with exertion. Sweat stung her eyes. And always, Daniel remained the same, calm, steady, unshaken. She realized, with a shock that felt like betrayal, that he wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to endure. Her people had taught her that strength was dominance, the power to impose will through force. But this man fought differently. He wasted no motion, carried no arrogance. Every step, every breath, was measured, patient, certain. The weight of her frustration pressed harder than her armor. At last she raised her blade for a finishing strike, her vision narrowing into a single point of fury. The steel descended like judgment itself. And Daniel moved. Not to dodge. Not to block. He caught her blade. His bare hand closed around the edge as it fell. Gasps tore from the crowd. Kaelira's eyes widened in disbelief as the impossible happened. The sacred metal, forged in the heart of stars, trembled against his grip. Then, with a sharp crack, the blade split in two. Shards of shining steel clattered to the ground. The silence was absolute. Kaelira staggered back, staring at the broken weapon in her hands. Her mind reeled. No monster, no champion, no god had ever undone her blade. And this human, this farmer, had shattered it with his flesh and will. She dropped to her knees, her breath ragged. The world tilted. She had been stripped bare, not by force, but by something she could not name. Daniel stood before her, blood trickling from his palm where the blade had cut. He did not raise the wooden weapon. He did not press his advantage. Instead, he held out his hand to her. "Enough," he said simply. The word fell heavier than her broken sword. Kaelira bowed her head, shame and awe warring within her. For the first time since her exile, her strength felt small. The duel was over. The revelation. The torches guttered in the night breeze. The crowd remained frozen in silence, their eyes shifting from the broken shards of Kaelira's blade to the human who had shattered it. Daniel lowered his hand, blood streaking his palm. He wrapped the cut in a strip of cloth without ceremony, as though the wound were nothing worth mention. Then he turned back to her, his gaze steady, not gloating, not mocking. "You fought with everything you had," he said. "But strength isn't only about breaking things. Sometimes it's about what you hold together." Kaelira's chest rose and fell, her breath ragged. The words struck deeper than her wounds. For years she had been praised, feared, exiled, all for her power. She had believed strength meant dominance, that to stand above all others was the highest calling. And yet here, kneeling in the dirt before a man who had refused to fall, she felt something entirely new. Defeat. But not disgrace. "What are you?" she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Just human. Nothing more." She stared at him, bewildered. "No warrior has ever done this. No blade has ever been broken in my hand. You say, just human, but I have faced gods and beasts that fled before me. How can you be less, and yet greater?" He looked past her, toward the gathered colonists. Children clung to their parents, watching with wide eyes. The farmers, the builders, the laborers, all stood together, holding their breath. "We're not stronger than the others out there," Daniel said slowly. "Not faster. Not harder to kill. But we endure. We adapt. We refuse to stop, no matter how much we're outmatched. That's why we survive. That's why we fight. Not to dominate, but to protect." The words sank into Kaelira like a second shattering. Her people had taught her that victory was the only truth, that mercy was weakness. But here was a man who had beaten her without seeking glory, who had protected without seeking conquest. For the first time, Kaelira felt the weight of her exile as more than punishment. Perhaps her people had not only feared her, they had pitied her, too, for never seeing beyond the blade. She lowered her head, her voice low. "Then I have been blind. Strength without purpose is nothing." The colonists began to stir, whispering among themselves. Some looked at Daniel with awe, others at Kaelira with wary respect. No one moved to strike her down, though she was kneeling, unarmed, vulnerable. That was new, too. Among her people, weakness meant death. Here, weakness was met with restraint. Daniel extended his hand once more. After a long pause, Kaelira took it. His grip was firm, steady, pulling her back to her feet. "I don't need an enemy," he said. "But if you want to learn, there's room here for more than fighters." The offer stunned her more than the duel had. To be given a place, not as a conqueror or exile, but as something else. The idea was almost foreign. She nodded, her voice rough. "Then I will learn." The days that followed were unlike anything Kaelira had known. She helped mend fences instead of raising blades. She lifted plows, repaired engines, carried water. Her strength, once a weapon of fear, became a tool of service. The colonists began to smile at her presence. Children ran at her heels, daring one another to touch her armor. Farmers offered food and laughter instead of challenge. She learned to sit at long wooden tables and share meals, to watch the sun rise without thinking of battle. And in every quiet moment, she remembered the duel, the sight of her broken blade in the dirt, the unshakable calm of a human who had fought not to win, but to protect. One evening, Kaelira stood at the edge of the fields with Daniel. The horizon burned with the colors of sunset. "My people believed strength was divine," she said quietly. "But perhaps it is not strength alone. Perhaps divinity lies in what you choose to do with it." Daniel glanced at her, his eyes calm as ever. "Power is just a tool. Purpose makes it matter." She nodded slowly. For the first time, the restless fire inside her eased. As night fell, Kaelira looked back at the settlement, the humans moving about their simple tasks, unaware of the enormity of what they carried within them. Fragile, short-lived, unremarkable by the galaxy's measure. And yet stronger than any she had ever known. She had defeated every warrior she faced. But the human she challenged had caught her blade, and shattered far more than steel. He had shattered her pride. And in its place, something greater began to grow.